20 years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. I got a few articles that I'm going to start off the first hour with. I have one over Monsanto, and they are now facing, according to this article, a wave of lawsuits after WHO cancer study. And they were also on the show The Doctors. And, well, they had one of their scientists on there trying to defend Monsanto. And she didn't seem to convince the doctors. It didn't seem like she did. They seemed pretty skeptical. And it's pretty interesting. We'll get into that. Apparently, Anderson Cooper calls out CNN reporter on Planned Parenthood videos. I might dive into that one. I'm not sure yet. Also, one over NATO launching exercise to prep for war with not Russia, according to them. We'll get into those. I also want to get into global trade is collapsing as the worldwide economic recession deepens. And that was a couple days ago out of the economic collapse, which we'll go ahead and start off with the Ron Paul Liberty Report that kind of relates to that, where China is selling treasuries, and it seems like the dollar is in for some more trouble. So let's go ahead and dive into this.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Good to see you, Daniel.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. There's an article out today on Bloomberg, which caught my attention, but we've talked about this issue before. It's a pretty important issue, and that has to do with who's going to keep buying our debt? You know, who's going to finance us? We tend to overspend, and, you know, our national debt's pretty big, 18, 19 trillion. Nobody knows exactly how to count it all. Maybe it's even bigger than that, but we have a foreign debt of over $6 trillion. But China is the biggest holder, and they just recently passed Japan, but Japan owns a lot of our debt too. But China has gotten in a little trouble, and they've started selling their debt. But the article says China's selling tons of U.S. debt. Americans couldn't care less. So first question is, let's give some investment advice. Daniel, are you going to gobble up some of these bonds since they're out there and take care of your children in the future?
Exactly. I need to wallpaper my bathroom.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't imagine anybody thinking about buying U.S. debt as an investment, and I just see this as a place to park money, and the big guys parking it, whether it's governments or banks or big corporations, who knows what, but it's hardly in an investment. But, it had been predicted, and I want to put a chart up here to show what China has been doing, because I've expressed a lot of concern about when China starts selling, it could be contagious and others would start to sell, and it could, start a panic. Well, they've sold $200 billion. Right now, that's peanuts, because the chart there shows at the peak there was $1.6 trillion. And then a short while ago, it just drifted for last year. Then it was at 1.4, and just recently they sold off $200 billion. But interest rates didn't go up, and American mutual funds, kept buying this stuff. So nothing. It didn't seem to hurt, and interest rates stayed down. Interest rates didn't go up. So you wonder, about why didn't it do this? And, of course, that is the big question, because financially and economically, the news is not all that good. Retail sales are down, manufacturing is down, the real unemployment rate, even as reported by the Fed, is over 10%. So there's, a lot of reason to think that we're in trouble. You'd think this would be a signal that interest rates were going back up. But the best I can figure this out is it's just a sign that the bubble's getting bigger. And in a scheme of things, maybe $200 billion is not all that much. But the immediate effect has been minimal, but I'm not thinking that's going to last very long.
Well, the article seems to me at least to be saying that, the naysayers are wrong just because China is dumping some of these. Not a big deal. Americans are picking them up, taking up the slack. Don't worry, nothing to see here. Well, why do you think Americans are buying these up so much?
I don't think individual Americans are thinking about it. There's mutual funds that are buying them, and I'm sure a significant amount, and Americans do have money in mutual funds and thinking that's just a haven, and in the past, this would be a reasonable thing to do. I think the fact that they're doing this, that means they're not buying stocks, and they're not earning interest on this. I think it's a sign of how weak the economy is rather than how strong, because there's no place else to go. So the people are doing this. But I can't imagine too many Americans, individuals, well, this looks like a good day to take my lifetime savings and put it into 30-year bonds or 10-year treasuries. I don't think that is happening. But I think it's also not individual Americans as much as part of maybe the President's Working Group on Financial Markets, which is the plunge protection team, because they have control of the whole system. They have control of the credit. So if the Fed comes along and pumps this money into banks and big corporations and different things, that maybe they have a quid pro quo. I mean, we'll put the cash in there and you do this, you do this with it and you accommodate. And I think there's a lot of that. I think it happens overseas too. I wouldn't be surprised if someday when they sort this all out that it wasn't just American individual investors buying all this debt. I think other people are buying it too that are in cahoots with the Fed to pretend, that everything is okay. That's generally what they have to do, because the value of the dollar depends on confidence, and confidence is subjective. Though maybe you and I would decide, well, that's an illusion. They shouldn't have this much confidence. Confidence is still important, but it also means that you can lose confidence quickly. It may be artificial and they shouldn't do it, but for now, there is this confidence, and that's where we are right now, so we have to wait and see. But instead of this being a sign that we have a healthy dollar and a healthy economy and interest rates didn't go up, I think it's a sign that it was so weak that they have no other place to go.
That's, as a non-expert, that's the feeling I got from the article. And at the beginning, it's, emphasized this is no problem, Americans are taking up the slack. Then you get further down in the article and they quote the chief strategist for Prudential, who says, there's no need for a rate hike now. There's no need for that. So am I wrong that it seems to be two contradictory statements?
No, I think that was an important part of the article. And that, they had two different opinions, but I agree with that because I think this puts this information out. The economy is doing good. Interest rates aren't going up. Why are we worrying about this? And it'll be the excuse for not raising interest rates, and that's all they're looking for. And, of course, my position for a long time has been that the Fed won't raise interest rates, even a quarter of 1%. They're terrified about doing this because of the psychological effect on the markets. So I think that they are frightened by this, and they're going to use this as an excuse and send more assurance to the market that they're not on the verge of raising it. And today the markets are not doing a heck of a lot, but I think eventually it won't matter. I think that it'll be irrelevant. And eventually, I don't think that $200 billion will be the amount being sold. It'll be a lot more. Then all of a sudden, I still believe in the rush to the exit that people finally say, what are you going to do? Of course, the question might be, what do you think what do you think the people are going to do with the money? And that is the big question. Generally what happens is people go to the safest investment or position. And there was somebody that wrote in the 70s, he had been a central banker for another government, John Exter. Interesting guy. He was a deflationist, really believed in deflation, and massive debt, and it has to shrink. And he described this as an inverted pyramid. And at the peak of this inverted pyramid was gold and silver, because that was the real money. So you'd have all the investments that fractional reserve banking and real estate and all kinds of things up above in the stock. And eventually people would get nervous and they would gravitate down to the most secure investment. I think that's where we are today, but not to gold and silver. Yeah, some people buy it, but people aren't rushing into it. But they're still happy with the dollar, and they're still happy with treasury bills. I think that confidence will be lost, and then you're going to see some fireworks.
Why do you think China is selling so many? Is it purely economics, and they've been in a downturn for a while? Is it just economics, or are there some political considerations?
No, I don't think they're politically, because if they toyed with that right now, which they could, if we push came to shove, they could do a lot of damage to us, but it would be done to them. I think it's financial. They have to support their currency and support the economy. Right now, it used to be that we thought of Saudi Arabia as the big holder of debt. But, Saudi Arabia is in bad financial, all that wealth, and they can't pay their bills, and China's not in that kind of trouble. They have a lot of money in the bank. We technically are in trouble because we're the debtor. We owe this $6 trillion overseas, and yet China has, $1.4 trillion of our money, sitting there, and they can use that for quite a while. And in their interest will be, not to cause a panic. But if they keep going down and there is this panic, it's going to be hard to find the gold and the silver. Matter of fact, we've heard evidence of that already. Some coin dealers, they say by the commodities market that gold is $1,150 and silver is $16. But go buy some coins, you have trouble finding it. And that is what will happen, because we're dealing with trillions of dollars, and they just couldn't do it. It's going to, of course, people are holding the gold, it's going to go up sharply. But there will be then a shift in attitude, because people will start buying things that they might use in the future, because they know once they sense that the prices are going to go up, but they'll want things more than anything else. Real estate will be part of it, but people who are elderly, they can't live off real estate unless there's some income from it, and you don't sell it easily. But people might buy stuff, that they can use, and that, of course, will cause price inflation instead of just targeted inflation in some costs. This weekend, I thought, this is a typical example of how the government handles things. Well, things are so good that there's no inflation today, So therefore, Social Security beneficiaries don't get a cost of living increase. But at the same time, they announced a 52% increase in the cost of Medicare B. So the prices are skyrocketing. At the same time, they're not giving. That's how foolish the whole system is. But it'd be tough to buy medical care in the future. So that will be a major problem. And this total failure of the Obamacare thing is just atrocious about how many companies are going bankrupt. I think there are less than half of the people they expected to be signed up to. So that is a total fiasco, and you're going to see some price rises there. Matter of fact, some people have been forced to buy insurance, and they've always been cash patients.
Yeah.
But they bought this insurance, and guess what? They're still cash patients because the deductibles are so high, and they don't get their small bills paid. So it's more than doubled the cost of their medical care. So this I believe will come. I think we're close to it. I think that's what this is a sign of. This idea that this is not so bad news. I think today it's not critical. There was no explosion of a problem, but I think it tells us the bubble is very, very big. It's very precarious, and looks like it can tolerate even more. But the longer it lasts, the worse it's going to be when push comes to shove and this thing explodes. But the reason I've been so concerned about it is that I see it as being different, than ever before, because it's worldwide. It isn't just one country. It's because of the dollar reserve standard, and it's been a fiat dollar, and there's such a huge amount of debt. I think one thing that's interesting about this is, it's easy for corporations and banks to get money because the Fed gives them for free. And one thing is the executives in a corporation gets their pension or their bonuses based on the stock value. So they get this cash. The company gets into a little trouble, and there's a few out there right now. They get into trouble, and they borrow a lot of money, and they buy their own stock. Well, it pushes the stock up. But there's some now that it really didn't push the stock up. So they borrowed the money, put the money into their stock. They lose money on their own stock, too, because the value goes down, and they're not going to get their bonuses. And that is starting. And I think when they admit there's a real recession going on, I think you're going to see that a lot. There was an article today in the Houston paper that said that we have no idea the ramifications of the lost jobs in the oil industry. And Texas is still doing great, but the pension fund deals in Texas is just not as bad as others, but it still has problems. So I think really on the long run, what we see today and this whole idea of China selling tons of U.S. debt, I wouldn't even call it tons of U.S. debt. It's a lot, but it didn't cause a panic, and the dollar is still there. It's going to last for a while, but it's still, from my viewpoint, bad news because they're propping up a very, very bad system. It's like having a cancer and giving them a drug to take care of the pain and not treat the cancer. This is not treating anything. As a matter of fact, it just encourages bad action by our Federal Reserve and our government. Today, it was easy to find somebody saying, the Fed's done their share. They can't do any more. It's up to the Congress to spend more money. It's a fiscal problem that we have. At the same time, a few people in Congress are trying desperately to maybe cut a nickel out of the budget, and they can't even do it. So it's an attitude that has to be reversed. This is just another symptom of how serious it is, and this won't change until the American people decide a different role for our government. Our government being the caretaker of everybody from cradle to grave in a welfare state, both rich and poor, at the expense of the middle class, and that we have to police the world. As long as that's our philosophy, and put all the weight on the dollar and all the trust in the dollar, and this illusion of trust in a system that makes no sense whatsoever, it will come to an end. I think what we read today just means that we're one step closer, even though some people may be lulled to sleep by saying, see, you guys worry too much. It didn't have much of an effect. Well, that's something that I do. I don't so much worry about it, but I try to point it out because I'm so confident that if we did the right thing, these problems could be solved. And the right thing is live in a free society, have sound money, and limit the role of government and give up on welfare and socialism and warfare, and the problems would be solved. So the solution is out there, and that's all we have to do is wake up enough Americans that when that crunch comes, when the bus comes, that we have enough people telling our representatives exactly what they ought to do. And I think we're making some progress there, but we have a lot of work to do yet. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Go check it out. Subscribe to it. You can also go to ronpaullibertyreport.com. Now I want to get in this article, which there's a few things that I kind of disagree with Ron Paul in there, that China isn't willing to hurt their U.S. economy. Because it might hurt their economy, but I don't think that they're too worried because right now their economy isn't doing well. And with its cooperation with China or China's cooperation with Russia and Russia pulling their card in Syria, I think actually it would be perfect timing for them because it basically is a sending of a message to the rest of the world. Now that doesn't mean that that's exactly what they're doing, but I see now is just as good as opportunity is later, just depending on how they want to play their cards. But let me get in this article, the Economic Collapse blog.com. Global trade is collapsing as the worldwide economic recession deepens. When the global economy is doing well, the amount of stuff that is imported and exported around the world goes up. And when the global economy is in recession, the amount of stuff that is imported and exported around the world goes down. It is just basic economics. Governments around the world have become very adept to manipulating other measures of economic activity, such as GDP. But the trade numbers are more difficult to fudge. Today, China accounts for more global trade than anyone else on the entire planet, and we have just learned that Chinese exports and Chinese imports are both collapsing right now. But this is just part of a larger trend. As I discussed the other day, British banking giant HSBC has reported that total global trade is down 8.4% so far in 2015, and global GDP expressed in U.S. dollars is down 3.4%. The only other times global trade has plummeted this much has been during other global recessions, and it appears that this new downturn is only just beginning. For many years, China has been leading the revolution in global trade, but now we are witnessing something that is almost unprecedented. Chinese exports are falling, and Chinese imports are absolutely imploding. Growth of exports from China has been dropping relentlessly for years. Now this growth has actually turned negative. In September, exports were down 3.7% from a year earlier. The inevitable fallout from China's unsustainable and poorly executed credit splurge. As Thomson Reuters Alpha now puts it, most of these exports are manufactured goods that are shipped by container to the rest of the world, and imports into China are a mix of bulk and containerized freight have been plunging, down 20.4% in September from a year earlier after at a 13.8% drop in August. This week, it was announced that Chinese GDP growth had fallen to the lowest level since the last recession, and that makes sense. Global economic activity is really slowing down, and this is deeply affecting China. So what about the United States? Well, based on the amount of stuff that is being shipped around in our country, it appears that our economy is really slowing down too. The following comes from Wolf Richard, and I shared some of it in a previous article, but I think that it bears repeating. September is in the early phase of the make or break holiday shipping season. Shipments usually increase from August to September. They did this year too. The number of shipments in September inched up 1.7% from August, according to the Cass Freight Index, but the index was down 1.5% from an already lousy September last year, when shipments have fallen from prior month instead of rising. And so in terms of the number of shipments, it was the worst September since 2010. It has been crummy all year, with the expectation of January and February. The shipping volume has been lower year over year every month. The index is broad. It tracks data from shippers no matter what carrier they choose, whether truck, rail, or air, and includes carriers like FedEx and UPS. What major retailers such as Walmart are reporting also confirms that we are in a major economic slowdown. Walmart recently announced that its earnings would fall by as much as 12% during the next fiscal year, and that caused Walmart's stock to drop the most in 27 years. This article goes on for a little bit more. Check it out, the economiccollapseblog.com. Global trade is collapsing as the worldwide economic recession deepens. I don't know if I can find this other article. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Give me a second here while I see if I can find this. I don't think I am. Not finding the one I was looking for. I know I've seen it. For some reason, it seems like I can't find it now. Huh. Okay, well, we'll move on from that then, since I can't find that article. And I have an article here from Infowars.com. Give me a second while it loads. Maybe. Okay. This one, InfoWars, Dow Jones Industrial average drops as IBM sinks on mixed Q3 earnings. And this was yesterday. U.S. stocks fluctuated Tuesday as Wall Street continued to weigh mixed corporate earnings in the technology sector. Shares of Dow Component International Business Machine Corp, IBM, dropped 5% Tuesday, a day after the technology company posted a 14% drop in revenue, driven by a strong U.S. dollar and weakness in hardware sales. After falling roughly 80 points following the opening bell, the Dow reversed and gained as much as 36 points in morning trading after United Technologies Corporation jumped 4.5%, helping push the blue chip index higher. The U.S. aerospace and building systems conglomerate beat earnings forecasts and announced plans to restructure company before the end of the year. The Dow reversed again in midday trading to a trade flat. 5 of the 10 sectors in the Standard & Poor's 500 index traded lower, led by a 1% decline in healthcare stocks. The telecom sector rose roughly 1% after Verizon Communications topped Wall Street's earning estimates. And that one's from InfoWars. I have another one here from InfoWars. Oh, okay. I found the other article, and it was on InfoWars. Walmart killing the heart of America. Retail giant falling into terminal decline. Walmart is finally starting to collapse after destroying American businesses. And this is a clip here from InfoWars, and it's a quick clip, so bear with me here.
Walmart, the made-in-China fueled small American business killing plague, is finally feeling the symptoms of its part in destroying the U.S. economy. Forbes reported Walmart recently announced that it was raising its minimum starting wage to $9 an hour, 24% higher than the federal minimum. Since Walmart is famous for its ruthless cost management, this appeared on its face to be a significant sign of a tightening labor market. Walmart wasn't offering higher wages because the labor market was streamlining. The Walton family raised the minimum wage to $9 an hour due to the liberal socialist madness generated by Washington, D.C. Now those chickens have come home to roost, and it didn't take long. Zero Hedge reports Walmart stocks have nosedived, and it hasn't seen a low like this in 17 years. The stock had fallen by 22%. Walmart as a brand is comparable to heroin. It's incredibly bad for our economy, but the addictive supply is on every corner, and the other pusher just can't compete. The dealers in this market smackdown are the richest family in America, valued at $140 billion, equal to the value of 42% of American families combined.
Walmart is the canary in the coal mine. It's the canary that ate the local businesses, the local industry that helped shut down our industry. It was the big Chinese Bonanza Mart that helped push all of this. People say, oh, look, Walmart's a snake eating itself. See, no, it's not. What is it? 6 different Walmart heirs, all worth 45, 46, last time I checked, $1 billion a piece. And you can say, hey, folks don't have to shop there. Books have been written on how Walmart manipulated markets, engaged in all sorts of underhanded chicanery. And now the American people, even though the population's growing because of the third world influx, the profits are going down. But at a certain point, that's what it's meant to do. It's a consolidation curve. It's meant to end the free market as we know it. And then Walmart moves on to more multinational operations. They made the deals with China. They set it up. They were successful.
While the Waltons take down America from their multi-million-dollar yachts, they simultaneously pose as the saviors by setting up fake philanthropic foundations and creating a brand that claims to care for American families. They actually couldn't care less. They've donated next to nothing to charity. Comparatively, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have given approximately 30% of their wealth to charity, and those guys are evil. Now, a new report from the globalist machine, the World Bank, projects that 600 million new jobs must be created over the next 10 years, or 5 million a month, just to prevent the situation from getting worse. The majority of the unemployed will be between the ages of 15 to 29 years old. Millennials already make up an average of 40% of the unemployed in the United States. A generation living in poverty during the best years of their lives is a hard way to go. Meanwhile, the homogenized business model of corporatized chains akin to Walmart are gobbling up what once made America great while blazing a corporocratic trail towards the death of America in their own greedy globalist lifetimes. John Bound for Infowars.com.
Infowars.com. When we look at this, Walmart definitely killed mom and pop stores around the country. And remember when they said, oh, it wouldn't do that. And they surely have. And they don't give back. They do, keep most of their money. And they killed the mom and pop stores. They killed the small business economy that was thriving at one point. And if you haven't noticed, you go to Walmart now, you look for things and they don't have it anymore. Now, because they became so big in America, now with their stock, falling, they have a direct effect on the economy through the stock market, even though the stock market, when it goes up, does not actually indicate a good economy. Despite what mainstream might tell you. And being someone that works in the factory settings, what remaining factories are around, I've noticed in the past year that things aren't looking too great. And the businesses that are getting by are doing it through means that they basically venturing into new territory because they have no option. And it's still not, it's barely keeping them afloat. And that could collapse any day. And, other factories, they're really just doing everything to try to be able to sustain their workforce. And there's other places that are probably looking to shut down because it's getting too hard to compete. There's not enough consumers, and they're like, that's why you got to spend. You got to spend that way. There's nothing to spend. People can't go into debt no more. They have no option other than to pay debt off. File for bankruptcy maybe, and then start saving. That way maybe they'll have a future. But all this can play into itself, and every little domino that falls can just trigger something that we haven't seen in America for a long time. And that has some people concerned. It doesn't have as many people concerned as I would think. the main people that are seeing it and are starting to finally get concerned are a lot of the business owners, the small local owned companies. And they're looking at it like, I'm going to stay optimistic, but you can still see that, this can't go on for that long. Otherwise, we're in trouble. We can deal with it for a while, but eventually it needs to turn around, and that eventually probably needs to happen by the beginning of next year, which many people are saying is unlikely. And part of the reason why they're saying it's unlikely, again, some of it was in the one from the Economic Collapse blog about there's not a lot of commerce going on during a time that we should see a pickup. Well, we've seen a pickup, but the pickup is way lower than it was the previous year. Even though it's a pickup, well, yeah, we're going to have some type of pickup. But if we can't match or do better than next year, does that mean that that's showing a good outlook for next year? No. If they keep things afloat, it's going to be through the creation of a bubble, which only will further the hurt when that bubble pops. And I don't know if they're willing to create a bubble. I think they're wanting this one to pop before they create another one. And just like 2008, you're going to see people laid off, people losing work, full-time jobs being lost, and then when those full-time jobs are replaced with part-time jobs, they're going to tell you how great the economy is getting. It's literally a drain on America's wealth. And they're taking it usually from the middle class. They're furthering that gap between the wealthy and the middle class, and they're knocking people off of that chip too. We're going to see a point where I think we're going to see class warfare if this continues, because the more people that are now working 2 part-time jobs just to barely, sometimes not even, sustain the way of life that they had before. Some are downsizing, working 2 part-time jobs and still struggling. And if you think a bubble popping now isn't going to be that big of a deal, yeah, I think you're mistaken. So we're looking at all that, and we're going to definitely have an issue here, I think, at the beginning of next year, where we're not going to see the economy start off where it needs to. Before we get into hour 2, I want to get to this one. Monsanto facing wave of lawsuits after WHO cancer study. Monsanto Company, one of the world's leading agrochemical companies, has had a difficult year regarding public relations. Not only has Monsanto been the focus of 2 studies by the World Health Organization, which found its products are possibly and probably carcinogenic, but the company has been forced to cut 12% of its employees due to declining stock value. Monsanto's problems only seem to be increasing as personal injury lawyers are now looking for plaintiffs who have been harmed by the corporation's products. Reuters reported the latest lawsuit was filed Wednesday in Delaware Superior Court by 3 law firms representing 3 plaintiffs. A lawsuit similar to others filed last month in New York and California accusing Monsanto of long knowing that the main ingredient in Roundup, glyphosate, was hazardous to human health. Monsanto led a prolonged campaign of misinformation to convince government agencies, farmers, and the general population that Roundup was safe, the lawsuit states. Monsanto Monsanto continues to deny the charges against its products. Company spokeswoman Charla Lord told Reuters glyphosate is not a carcinogen. The most extensive worldwide human health database ever compiled on agricultural products contradicted the claims in the suits. The California lawsuit was filed by 58-year-old Enrique Rubio, a former farmer worker in California, Texas, and Oregon. The anti-media reported on his case. One of his main duties included spraying fields with Roundup and other herbicides. Mr. Rubio maintained these tasks until he was diagnosed with bone cancer in 1995, the lawsuit states. Attorney Robin Greenwald, a representative in the Enrique Rubio case, says she believes additional lawsuits will emerge because Roundup is the most widely used herbicide and whose statements support ongoing concerns surrounding glyphosate. Another lawsuit filed against Monsanto comes from 63-year-old New Yorker Judy Fitzgerald. Excuse me. Fitzgerald claims that her cancer was caused by exposure to Roundup when she worked in a horticultural company during the 1990s. Judy Fitzgerald was diagnosed with leukemia in 2012. In March of this year, Truth Media reported that the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, published a report in the Cancer Oncology detailing evaluations of organophosphate, pesticides, and herbicides. The report concluded that there was limited evidence of carcinogenicity in humans for non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The evidence for this conclusion was pulled from studies of exposure to the chemical in the U.S., Canada, and Sweden published since 2001. The researchers found convincing evidence that glyphosate can also cause cancer in laboratory animals. The report points out that United States Environmental Protection Agency had originally classified glyphosate as a possibly carcinogenic to humans in 1985. Glyphosate is not only the most widely used herbicide, it is a key ingredient in biotech. The IARC working group evaluated the original EPA findings and more recent reports before concluding there is sufficient evidence of carcinogenicity in experimental animals. Despite the WHO's findings, the EPA approved Monsanto's use of glyphosate as recently as 2013. Giant Monsanto's popular Roundup products. Glyphosate is one of Monsanto's products that have been recently connected to cancer. However, in June, the IARC also found that the weed killer 2,4-dichlorophenoxyretic acid, known as 2,4-D, possibly causes cancer in humans. IARC reviewed the latest scientific research before deciding to classify 2,4-D as possibly carcinogenic to humans, a step below probably carcinogenic. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has been receiving pressure to restrict or prohibit the use of 2,4-D. While some farm group and pesticide industry groups say the chemical does not need any more restriction. Of particular interest with the recent findings is that in April, the EPA approved the use of Dow AgroSciences Endless Duo herbicide, which contains 2,4-D and glyphosate. Endless Duo is part of a partnership between Monsanto and Dow, known as the Endless Weed Control System. Monsanto has not released a statement on whether or not they will also convene a panel to study the Ilex claims about 2,4-D. In 2013, Ben Swan examined several controversies surrounding Monsanto in a Truth and Media episode, and we'll go ahead and play that.
It is a name that Americans are hearing more and more. Monsanto, an agriculture company that has become synonymous with the term GMOs. So what is Monsanto? What exactly are GMOs? And why are so many people up in arms about a company that grows food? The first step toward truth is to inform. If the name Monsanto was not familiar to you, let's get you caught up. According to Monsanto's website, Monsanto is a sustainable agriculture company. We deliver agricultural products that support farmers all around the world. We are focused on empowering farmers, large and small, to produce more from their land while conserving more of our world's natural resources, such as water and energy. We do this with our leading seed brands in crops like corn, cotton, oilseeds, and fruits and vegetables. Well, sounds pretty good. In short, Monsanto is a company that, among other things, produces the herbicide Roundup. But the controversy surrounding Monsanto begins with their development of genetically modified seeds, or GMOs, that are called Roundup Ready. Roundup Ready crops are reportedly more resistant to weed killer and insects. According to Natural News, a growing body of evidence does connect GMOs with health problems, environmental damage, and violation of farmers' and consumers' rights. Concerns like those have pushed millions worldwide into the streets to protest Monsanto and their GMOs. In May of 2013, 2 million people in over 50 countries expressed outrage over a number of issues surrounding Monsanto. Okay, so the first concern, the safety of those GMOs. But there is more. While there is growing concern over the safety of GMOs, the United States, for all the requirements placed on the food industry, requires no GMO food labeling. Whether you agree or disagree on whether or not GMOs are dangerous, 64 other countries require GMO labeling. Again, the United States does not. Could it be that most Americans just don't care? Well, actually, no. Despite the lack of political will on this issue, a poll conducted earlier this year by the New York Times found that 3/4 of Americans are concerned about the number of genetically modified or engineered foods. What's more, a staggering 93% support mandatory labeling of GMO foods. So to recap, first, there is the concern over GMOs. Second is the concerns over labeling. And third, there is the issue of Monsanto holding a patent on all of its seeds. Monsanto explains on their website the need for patents, saying, Monsanto patents many of the seed varieties that we develop. Patents are necessary to ensure that we are paid for our products and for all the investments we put into developing these products. This is one of the basic reasons for patents. You see, when a farmer purchases these genetically modified seeds from Monsanto, they sign a licensing agreement promising to use all the seed and to not use any regenerated seed for future crops. So to recap the issues with Monsanto, questions about the safety of GMOs. They're certainly out there, though we should be clear, there are those who argue that GMOs are perfectly safe. They have no issues with consuming them. There are questions about labeling. Regardless of whether GMOs are good or bad, shouldn't the public have the right to know what they're putting in their bodies and have the right to either consume or walk away? And questions about the ability of a corporation to be able to patent seeds, preventing farmers from replanting crops without paying a fee or attempting to gain a patent over natural vegetables. So what you need to know is that all those questions may actually be secondary to this one. Is the biggest problem with a company like Monsanto its relationship with government. In the early 1990s, the FDA took a look at these genetically modified foods. There were a lot of concerns, including tests that showed rats were developing stomach lesions from the genetically modified tomatoes that they were fed. According to Jeffrey Smith, in memo after memo, these experts describe toxins, new diseases, nutritional deficiencies, and hard-to-detect allergens. So what changed? In 1994, the USDA's Food Safety Inspection Service hired a new administrator, Mike Taylor. Taylor had worked for the FDA in the 1970s, and then in the 1980s, he became a private sector lawyer for a firm that represented Monsanto. In 1994, Taylor takes over the FSIS and remains in that post until 1996. 1996, GMO foods begin showing up on the plates of Americans' homes. After 1996, Mike Taylor goes back into the private sector and this time goes to work for Monsanto itself. For the next 16 months, he works directly for the company. In 2009, he returns to the public sector, now leading the food side of the FDA. In fairness, Mike Taylor says he is not Monsanto's man. That claims that he is bought and paid for could not be further from the truth. In fairness, I don't know if that's true or not. What I do know is that regardless of whether or not it's true, the revolving door of government and private sector and the big advantages that big corporations have in the system is undeniable. Monsanto's influence over food supply is troubling. Their ability to seemingly prevent GMO labeling, also troubling. Their connections with people like Mike Taylor, who have the ability to control what does and does not show up on our families' tables, whether nefarious or not, certainly smells like crony capitalism. And that is a reality check. Well, now that you've been informed, it's time to get engaged. Go right now to benswan.com. There you're going to find the story where you can view it again.
Okay. Truthandmedia.com, no longer benswan.com. Check them out. Sorry, I had a sneeze there. Okay. Now, when we look at Monsanto, they're not the only company. Walmart's not the only company. All these large corporations, and remember, they want to have us believe corporations are people. No, corporations are businesses that are ran by people. And by saying that corporations are people, instead of holding the actual people accountable, it gives them basically an out. This artificial entity is always held accountable. Therefore, a lot of times, the company put out this product that's bad for people. Oh, we have investigations. Oh, now the company's fined this much money. And there can be some shady things going on there. Somehow we think by finding a company a small amount of money, even a decent amount of money, ever holds the people that allowed it to happen accountable. And these large corporations also tend to always have deep ties to government. Look at Goldman Sachs. We have to understand that we've been sold out a long time ago. And every year that we continue to decline as a society, is just further evidence. And, you know, all the hosts on this network, host on other networks, all the alternative media out here, even when we get things wrong and when we get things right, what we are doing is speaking about something that the mainstream media does not want to cover. And what we've noticed more and more are large corporations like Facebook, like Google, deciding what content should be considered relevant, proper, or the truth. And if you have an ideology that is a statist authoritarian ideology, what you consider to be truth is usually considered to be fallacy to someone that believes in freedom in the individual and believes in personal rights, individual rights. Well, Ron Paul has warned that truth tellers worldwide are under attack. And give me a second here. He talked about here he talks about Irwin Schiff being what he believes being killed by feds for speaking out. But he's warning about attacks against free speech, and we're seeing it more and more. What they're using is political correctness and considering things hate speech or inciting violence for simply calling people out for what they are or what they're doing. If you don't go along with what we want, then you're bad. But let me play this from InfoWars with Ron Paul.
There is so much I want to ask former Congressman and, of course, medical doctor Ron Paul about what's happening currently in our world. The race for the speakership, the Tea Party rebellion that he and others helped create, the situation in Syria, the rapidly degrading economy, but also political persecution. And I wanted to cover this first. Ted Cruz came out and said that he's worried about internet freedom, that there's major talk about censoring the internet in the Senate. Matt Drudge was on with us, giving us an exclusive interview a few weeks ago, saying that he talked face-to-face with a Supreme Court justice at dinner that said they've got the votes, they're coming to restrict free speech next year. Hillary has now announced that if she's elected, she will try for a national gun buyback and a repeal of the Second Amendment. That's actually a quote. So the statements are very bold right now, and we're seeing massive continued IRS persecution of conservative and libertarian groups. I wanted to not so much ask Ron Paul his view of this. I mean, I want to do that. I also wanted to ask him what we should do. I mean, I think it shows how effective the liberty movement is, that the system wants to silence us. But at the same time, I think we have to address this and really discuss how we're supposed to respond to it, because Matt Drudge said he's been told by high-level government folks the persecution's about to kick into high gear. He visited me 2 weeks ago to deliver that message. A lot of other high-level people are telling me the same thing. I know with your contacts, sir, you must be getting the same intel. So can you speak to this? And in Europe, they're arresting Germans that criticize open borders. It's not just here, but totalitarianism seems to be spreading its wings.
You know, when I left Congress a couple of years ago, I listed several things that I thought were the greatest danger to us, and the top one was freedom of expression, the First Amendment. Because if we're not allowed to express ourselves, it makes it so difficult for us to compete with the propagandists from our government and from the media. So I think it is crucial. But, you know, we are so hypocritical when it comes to our government because they pretend that we should support the issue of knowing the truth and knowing what's going on with government. And we even write laws to protect the whistleblowers who are telling us the truth. But now we have numerous whistleblowers that are put in prison, if they tell the truth. Matter of fact, the real irony is the chairman of the agency that's supposed to be in charge of protecting all the whistleblowers, he got fired because he told the truth about the whistleblower program. It really doesn't work. Now, this is getting worse, and there's a lot going on right now. But, just recently when we read about the death of Ernst Schiff, he was actually in prison and killed by our government because he spoke out about the unconstitutionality of the way taxes were being collected. And it wasn't so much that he was not a violent person. He wasn't for anarchy or anything else. And I don't think he ever said the statement that there should be no taxes either. But because he said what the government was doing was unconstitutional, and the government told him, you're not allowed to talk about that, and he did. And when he was 77, they put him in jail for 14 more years and literally, I think, killed him, because it was a death sentence and it was a life sentence and he didn't get his medical care. So that's how ruthless the government is. Now, in Ernst Schiff, I think is a good lesson because what was he saying? He was challenging the financing of a government that's run away. So the same way, if somebody tells us the truth about what's going on in the Middle East and how we have involved ourselves in these wars illegally and lied ourselves into these wars, our presidents have, they can't tolerate that. They cannot tolerate the truth about our foreign policy. They cannot tolerate the truth about why they are ruthless in collecting taxes. And they're not going to tolerate the truth about how the Federal Reserve is run. That's why I always believe that the Federal Reserve, if everybody knew about it, and more people know about it now than ever before, if the people knew about it, they wouldn't support the Federal Reserve. And fortunately, there's a lot of people waking up. But so much is done in secret. The bailouts are done in secret. So it's secret government that is the real issue. And when you talk about the ultimate secrets of government, then you become an enemy of the state. And when you have an empire, truth is treason in the empire of lies. And right now, people are considered treasonous if they start telling us the plain truth about what our government's doing to us.
That's right. Ron Paul, LibertyReport.com, one of many powerful sites. He's doing syndicated radio vignettes, daily television, reaching millions of people. And that's why they're coming in and wanting to censor and wanting to control and wanting to shut down competition because we're peacefully taking action. Erwin Schiff that died, Peter Schiff, frequent guest here, one of the top advisors, of course, to Ron Paul's campaign previously on economics. His dad was still chained down even when he couldn't speak anymore. And they basically wouldn't give him any medical care. And he died after spending 13 of a 14-year prison sentence. And I remember it was in the Las Vegas Review-Journal when the judge said in the courtroom, I remember covering it on air when he first went to prison 13 years ago, you were told don't sell this book anymore. You were told don't give speeches anymore. So I'm going to send you to prison for the maximum sentence. So they admittedly sent him to prison and then killed him in prison, as you said, Ron Paul. And you're a medical doctor speaking to this, for his speech. And that's where America has gotten to, where I've now had feds contact me, multiple feds, and tell me that the word is I shut up or they're going to set me up. And that's where this country's come to. And it's very, very sad.
And they are really, really actually going after free speech. You have what Supreme Court Justice reportedly told Matt Drudge. You have language in the TPP with copyright that's going to hinder a lot of alternative media. Because a lot of times the reports we get are basically, we have to do a lot of research, find quotes from different people, and those quotes might be exclusive to a media carrier. So what that does is it draws a lot of traffic to them. And you would think they would like that, because you're quoting something that they put out there. And again, it draws traffic to their website, but they don't like it. They don't like when Drudge doesn't even do a report, just links to their articles. Bad. Even though you do it on Facebook. But that's where the whole scariness definitely even goes to a even deeper level, that the language would even affect you sharing articles on Facebook. Because, well, you didn't write that article, you shouldn't share it. Plus, they write the rules so loosely all the time, too, you usually get caught up in that. So if you're posting nothing but articles that expose them, well, then you're bad. But if you share articles that make them look good, you'll probably be okay. And again, like I said, we've seen the censoring by different companies, and I look at Google as a really, really creepy company that I don't trust. But we tend to deal with them quite a bit as entrepreneurs, startup, YouTubers. They kind of pulled a Walmart on the internet, and they shut down a lot of their competition. But I have an article here I seen on Drudge. Google, your genome isn't really secret. Bloomberg.com, your genome isn't really secret, says Google's venture Bill Morris. Bill Morris has a simple proposition for those who are a little freaked out by his efforts to digitize human DNA. If we each keep our genetic information secret, then we're all going to die. Okay, then. The Google Ventures managing partner has shifted the firm's focus this year to investing in companies that aim to slow aging, reverse disease, and extend life. Many of those life sciences companies do this by collecting customers' genetic information and looking for trends. Hoarding this kind of personal data introduces risk, particularly as hacking becomes an everyday occurrence, but Morris dismissed privacy concerns surrounding the prospect of genomic data becoming public. What are you worried about? He said at a Wall Street Journal technology conference in Laguna Beach, California on Tuesday. Your genome isn't really secret. That's because people constantly leave traces of their genomic material lying around in public. If someone really wanted the information, they don't need to hack a server. They could just pull a cup with your saliva out of the trash and test it, said Morris. Now, I'm going to stop right there because I have a problem with that. Well, your DNA, we know cloning, all this, we know that science is becoming just a really freaky thing, and this kind of proves that, people are getting a little carried away with science to the point they're becoming the mad scientists. And if you have it doesn't matter what we do here in the U.S., what if you have mad scientists that are allowed to experiment and do crazy things over in a different country, and they learn how to manipulate people's DNA to match other people's DNA. All they have to do is hack the server, pull up your DNA, They got your DNA. Let's say you have some type of, you know, biometrics or anything like that that can be tricked. There's a lot of problems that come up because science is evolving faster than it has the ability to protect itself from. But it says here, who studied neuroscience and helped form Calico, a company within Google parent company Alphabet that focuses on age-related diseases. Google Venture is an investor in 23andMe, which sells a $99 DNA spit kit to provide customers with ancestry information. DNA technology has come a long way, Mars said. The technical problems around editing the genome are practically solved. As for his line about how we're all going to die, he didn't mean immediately. Mars is a fierce advocate for life extension, racing his own mortality to invest in companies that might keep him and the rest of humanity alive longer, or perhaps indefinitely. In the interview, Mars spoke alongside Peter Diamandis, the chief executive officer of the X Prize Foundation, which organizes complex technology competitions. They're both preoccupied with doubling human life expectancy. Analyzing a large database of genomic data is important to achieving that goal. If people started living drastically longer, we might find ourselves with some new problems, such as how to feed everyone. Demandis said that as people get happier and healthier, they have fewer kids. If people would eat less meat, Mars said there would be more room to grow food for them all. Mars, who doesn't eat meat and can't stand the taste, touted one of his investments, Impossible Foods, as a company that's creating meat substitutes capable of satisfying beef lovers. It was so much like meat that it disgusted me, Mars said. I couldn't finish it. So, this is one thing about these I don't even know, mad scientists, basically. They are looking for the fountain of youth. They're looking for immortality when it comes to aging and dying, which to maybe the everyday person, you know, it sounds good to me. That would be cool. I could live forever. But it doesn't turn out that way. We understand that we can accomplish a lot, but there's some things that the consequences from it don't get erased from any good that comes from it. And, you know, we start making people not live or not die. Well, there goes families. There goes a lot of stuff that more than likely would be outlawed. Having a family, that the more families you have and people don't die, or it could also be the elites just won't die. You can have family because you're going to die. You're going to need someone to replace you. And that'll be limited. These people are sick, really. There's a lot of these people that are sick in the head. I really believe so. And they're willing to do anything. And it kind of beckons back to, you know, history, where you had these people that did seek the fountain of youth. They were constantly thinking that there was this fountain of youth, and they really were mad in their quest for it. And you almost have to look at some of these people. And a lot of those people in history, they were educated. They were intelligent, but they were also mad to find this fountain of youth. And in turn, a lot of people suffered at their hands. Okay. I have one last clip that I do want to play here. And this is exclusive. We are changed. Feds disappear Native Americans that cops try to assassinate. Or Native American that cops try to.
This is Grudowski, and we are here in Nevada right now. I just got a personal message from a friend telling me about an insane story. And if this story is true, it is the craziest story that I have ever heard. We're going to find out right now if it's true. All I know is that there was this Native American family that was protesting nuclear dumping. The situation unfolded with the police coming in their house, shooting them, and then the FBI black bagging them and disappearing them. That's all I know now. We're going to go meet the family.
How did this all begin? How did this happen?
Well, it all started in the late 90s when they built the railroad and redone the railroad through the reservation. And there had something secretive about it. Their whole demeanor changed. And so I started looking into it, and I came to the conclusion that it was they were secretly shipping depleted uranium across the reservation, and I was concerned about it, and I was voicing my opinion pretty loud, and so that had a lot to do with it. We had a little mishap with the local police, rumors and stuff that was coming out of the police department, and I went and questioned them about it and called them out on it, and also we had brutality and different civil and constitutional rights being violated to other members. They started coming to us for support. My wife's nickname was Ellie McBeal. That's what the cops put on her tag, is here comes Ellie McBeal. We had 26 complaints. We got 4 officers removed from the force. And I could go into the background of some of these officers, but none of them was very pretty. They all had criminal records, from assault to mayhem, a lot of different things. And then they came in and shot up our home.
I ran to the front door and just opened it without looking to see who was out there. And it was this crazy police officer who pushed his way through the door and had his gun pointed at my head as the moment he came through the door. He's got the gun like this close to my head.
Was it the one that you got fired?
Yeah, the one we got fired, and you could tell he's mentally deranged at that moment. He doesn't say anything like I have a search warrant or anything, or that I'm a police officer or anything. He just has the gun at my head. I'm looking at the barrel of the gun. He's looking crazy, and he doesn't say anything, and I have enough time to ask him again, what are you going to do? Are you going to shoot me? But, I'm backing up. By that time, he grabs me with the other free hand. He's got the gun still pointed at my head. He pulls me to the front door and hands me to 2 other officers that are at the front door. At that moment, I realize he's here to shoot us. Okay. By that time, Jacob gets out of bed, and he has our dog, who she was a German Shepherd Rottweiler mix. She's kind of a big dog. Anyway, she's sleeping in his bedroom. They come running down the hallway and get to through the living room and to the front room. I'm down on the ground when Joe starts firing. He's back in the house, and he starts shooting. It was just a moment of silence because he's shooting. Me and the officers all look to see him shooting the dog in the living room. The dog comes around in front of him and takes the bullets.
Just a bunch of chaos, screaming from my wife hysterically. And all I could make of it is help me, help me. And it was just a commotion that was unbearable. And so I jumped out of bed, and I had one leg in my pants. I was dancing around trying to get my pants on. And then all of a sudden I heard gunshots. I peered over this partial wall, and just in time to see this big, large person, 300 plus pounds, and Jacob behind him on the ground or on the floor in front of the fireplace. And just about the time I looked over this wall, there was another loud gunshot, and a bunch of blood and stuff came out of the back end of Jacob. And anyway, the cop by that time was on one knee with his weapon pointed at his head. And that's when I intervened, and I started screaming at him. And then he rolled over and started just shooting everywhere. He fired over 13 times total. He shot, and the hell with it. I got a right to protect myself, so I fired back. And I didn't aim or anything else. I just put the gun over the wall and just shot. And, but I just, in an instant, I recognized as the cop that we had removed. I knew it was a cop by then. And that's the only persons that I saw was Jacob and this one big fat cop. And so I figured the only way out of this is to get rid of this gun and surrender, because they're going to finish what they started, And so I ejected the clip out of my gun. It was a .45 automatic. And I raised up above the wall with the clip in one hand, the gun in the other hand, over my head like this. And when I raised up, he shot through the wall. And that's when I took the bullets. I was on the floor, and I could see the bullets bouncing around my belly. And so anyway, that was as far as I got. And I was totally nude. I didn't have a stitch of clothes on. And so anyway, it went deathly quiet, and I came conscious about 2 to 3 hours later, and I hollered out, was there anybody out there? And then I heard a voice over a bullhorn telling me to put my arms up in the air behind my back and do this and do that. And I advised them that I was paralyzed. I couldn't walk. So then they instructed me to put my hands above my head and pull myself out by my fingertips, which I did. Eventually, I passed out 2 or 3 times before I finally got to the front porch. And then they told me to continue pulling myself down the porch and down the driveway to where they were at. And I told them, I just couldn't do it. And I passed out again. And the next thing I knew is one person had me by one arm and another by the other. And they just dragged me across the cement, down a gravel driveway, threw me in the back end of a pickup like a dead deer. And then they drove up to the top of to the end of the driveway atop the hill. And after that, I don't remember anything.
I get taken to jail and held for 72 hours with no phone calls or anything in Mineral County jail, so they won't even tell me if my family's alive or what for 3 days. The FBI, when they came to question me in jail, they made me waive my rights in order for me to find out if my family was alive or not.
I laid there in the induced coma, and they all expected me to die. They gave me every opportunity. And stubborn as I am, I didn't take it. But I was arrested while I was in a coma. They rolled me out to a waiting vehicle. They shackled me up and made sure I stood there and got nice and wet. I was also contacted staph infection while I was in there, so I wasn't in real good shape. And so they transported me down Highway 395, and we passed the exit to the airport. I wasn't upset because I knew I was supposed to be transferred to this medical center. And so when we passed the airport turnoff, I asked him, where the hell are we going? And he says, none of your effing business. You will really enjoy it. And so they kept on going. They took me to Carson City, Northern Nevada Correctional Center. And at about 11:30, they finally got through processing me into the prison. And they took me to the furthest most unit, which is Unit 8, and put me in total lockdown isolation.
Processed you as Lewis Puller.
Oh, yeah. Fictitious name.
Yeah. From the time I was arrested and the feds removed me out of the authority of the hospital, they had me bouncing around different rooms. They had me booked underneath the name of Lewis Puller. And that's what they booked me into the prison as, Lewis Puller. They denied my family access to where my whereabouts was. They denied that I was even there. And so being that I was booked into the federal prison as a federal safekeeper, I wasn't allowed medical attention. The doctors couldn't touch me. All they were to do was to house and feed me. And so that's where I stayed until late in April, in a room, 24/7, no exercise, just a room about this size with a angle iron bed, I guess you call it, a rack or a cot. Nothing else in the room. No television, no papers, no nothing. No visitors, no telephone. I mean, they was just trying to break me down. I was held as a federal safekeeper, same as a terrorist.
How long were you in jail for?
I was in jail from February 9th is when they transferred me from the hospital to the jail, and I didn't get released until May 18th.
All in solitary?
Yeah, total. Wow. 2 doors to get to me. I couldn't even talk to anybody if they was walking by. There was no way they could get to me.
Removed 2/3 of your colon. I mean, you should have had medical attention and the proper care.
I was supposed to be in a medical center. I wasn't supposed to be in isolation. Like I said, I had no medical treatment at all. The prison doctor came in and talked to me and explained it to me that because I wasn't not a convicted state inmate, that I was just being held by the form for the feds, and that I could not receive any medical treatment whatsoever, unless it was, if I had a heart attack and I was laying down dying, then out of humanity, they would have to send me to the hospital. But as far as treatment, I couldn't get what I needed in the state prison. They weren't allowed to touch me. And so that's what I lived with. No pain pill. Wow. The guards treated me inhuman.
Yeah, if you go into jail as a cop killer, you get a whole different
What they
treatment.
did is the feds had informed the warden that I'd killed 2 police officers and blah, 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 blah.
Not that you had attempted, but
that I killed 2 police officers, and that was the word out to the prison staff. And the doctor, was a lady, Dr. Getney. She came in and talked to me and told me why I couldn't get medical treatment. And then she told me that I would be going to federal prisons and all this. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And she says, well, you're charged with 2 counts of murder. And I said, no, that's wrong. And the next time that I talked to her, I had got my legal papers. They couldn't keep those from me. And they were given to me by my public defender, which is another story all by itself. But I showed her that I was charged with attempted murder.
What your real name was.
And what my real name was, and she was appalled. I was charged with one count of attempted murder involving a weapon. And then the following June, they brought another charge against me of attempted murder with a weapon of the police officer that got shot accidentally in the leg by the bullet that came out of Jacob's back. So they charged me with another count of attempted murder on that. And so we went to trial. I had several operations. We went to trial on November 18th of 08. And we was in trial to November 25th. As far as evidence go, the prosecution or the attorney general had none. Absolutely none. Every cop that they had up there perjured themselves. The FBI perjured themselves. They were caught on the stand by our attorney. I would say trapped. He opened the door, they jumped in, he closed it because they misled the grand jury to get the indictment. They misled the judge, the magistrate, to get another search warrant. They searched our house 3 times and tore it all apart and took chainsaws and everything, cut the floors up, the whole 9 yards.
You're still exiled.
Yeah, and I'm still exiled to this day. I can't go to my own house.
Even though you were found innocent on all charges?
Found innocent. The jury was out 25 minutes.
Well, I still have criminal charges pending. He still got my bail. But his charges, he was exonerated from the 2 counts of attempted murder. But they don't want to address mine.
It's never been dismissed. She was arraigned. And it cost us, what, $15,000 or $25,000 or...
Yeah, counting the $2,500 bail,
Yeah.
I had to put up $15,000 for a good attorney. And so all that money was basically lost.
Yeah.
And they're still holding it, and including holding charges that
Right.
have not even been put up.
No.
Yeah, they don't want to, they're just want to bury their head in the sand and act like it never happened. I don't know if you have any access to 911 records, but in our case, the 911 records are always erased.
Yeah, they had
So
a glitch.
we haven't never been able to get a copy of the 911 recordings because it's really horrific to hear him coming over the 911 calls. They're all erased.
About 13 calls altogether.
Yeah, the FBI somehow or another's done away with them all.
Is there anything we could do to help in any way, shape, or form with this situation?
Well, I left that house naked. And whatever we got today is what we've accumulated since, which isn't much. We're in need of residence and legal support. I don't know if it would be appropriate to have a foundation started or a funding started for legal expenses and everything, but I want to pursue it. I'm not going to quit. That's all there is to it. From the day that we were drug out of the house and all that, and the shooting, it's been a positive thing. I lived. I got out of jail. We proved our case in court. It took 25 minutes for the jury. I think they already had their mind up before they adjourned. And then here we are. We only had $7 in our pocket. Today, I'm fully recognized, 100% disabled, veteran, military connected, service connected. And, at least we can afford to eat. Life isn't always, it's slowly but surely progressed. It's a positive thing, and that's the way we try to keep our mindset is in a positive attitude.
Definitely. I'd just like to say thank you to you personally, but as far as the incident, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't be the person I am right now had this not happened to our family. I wouldn't And I'm glad that it happened to someone who is willing to stand up for our rights, for what's right, for your constitutional rights, and not roll over and be silenced.
Yeah, because everybody in America could be next. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
We Are Change on YouTube. Again, We Are Change on YouTube. Go check that out. And give me a second as I pull this up. Okay, this one's from filmingthecops.com. And this is just another example of police brutality and how authoritarian our society has gotten with law enforcement rather than peace officers. And the things that we've seen happen to African Americans during the civil rights movements are now happening to any race and anybody that is not the system. This one is mother brutally beaten for trying to shield her son from getting shot by police. Dover is a small town in Arkansas, the kind where everyone knows each other. With a population of 1,500, the friendly residents have a habit of greeting the people they meet. However, on the evening of September 13, 2011, a local family was punished for its cordial ways. Ron Robinson has been a volunteer firefighter in the town for more than 30 years. That night, his family suffered at the hands of several police officers and found themselves arrested for a single friendly gesture. A shocking turn of events. Eva Robinson, a Sunday school teacher, and her son Matthew were out walking their dog on a sidewalk when a police car drove past them. Dover Deputy Marshal Stephen Payton was driving, thinking that the two knew each other. The 16-year-old boy waved at him. This is when all hell broke loose. The police officer turned on his patrol lights, got out of the car, and threatened Matthew Payton, accused him of being on drugs. He told the startled boy that it was quite dubious that he waved to the cop while one of his hands was in his pocket. While he waited for backup, the officer ordered the mother, son, and dog into the back seat of his car. Once the other members of law enforcement arrived, they choked Matthew, beat him up, and tasered him several times. They dragged Eva across the ground and slammed her against a patrol car. As soon as the other cops arrived, they decided it was time to check the pair for weapons. One of them opened the door and ordered the mother and son to get out. As Matthew tried to get out, his shoe became stuck under a seat, causing him to lose his balance. When he reached his arm out asking a cop for assistance, Sergeant Christopher Stevens of the Polk County Sheriff's Office took this as a hostile gesture and started using his taser on him. Eva, who was already in a state of shock, thought the cops were shooting her son, so she covered Matthew's body to protect him. This was met with brutality. The officers dragged them out of the car, separating them, then tasered them to the point of the distressed woman urinating on herself. Even so, she could not continue witnessing her son being ill-treated by the cops, so she crawled towards the boy. This is when she was slammed against a car with such intensity that her body broke the vehicle's antenna. Payton himself admitted that she was a petite, slender female. She was then taken to jail on 30 charges, which include resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and an appalling accusation, criminal mischief, which caused a patrol car's antenna to break. Upon hearing the commotion outside, including his wife's loud shrieks, Ron Robinson rushed outside their home. As soon as the police spotted him, they ordered him to drop to his knees and place his hands over his head. They told him that his son had been caught with drugs and drug paraphernalia. This was a child who was not even permitted to use social media because the parents consider a negative influence. The family say their ordeal did not end that night, and they had been harassed by the authorities ever since. Several months later, the matter went to trial. Curiously, the judge did not allow dash cam footage to be used as evidence, stating that it had been brightened for better visibility. He found Eva guilty on all 3 charges and ordered her to pay more than $1,000 in penalty. She appealed, and the jury found her innocent after viewing the dash cam footage. This allowed the family to file a lawsuit through the American Civil Liberties Union of Arkansas in July 2013. Now, federal court jury, after 6 days of deliberations, has ruled against the Robinsons. Instead, a $225,000 settlement was reached with Sergeant Stevens in the Polk County. The loopholes? There were several steps that the cops managed to skip after the incident. They tried to cover up their wrongdoings by failing to even document the event correctly. In addition to this, a use of force report was not filed either, and they did not offer medical assistance to the victims, and there is no account on how many times the taser was used. The Dover police attorney offered dropped the charges against the Robinsons if they promised to keep quiet, a proposal that was rejected by the family. Turns out the Dover Police Department has a policy in place that allows them to detain civilians without any evidence of a crime. And they also have a clip to go with that, so go ahead, go check it out at filmingcops.com. Now, one thing, kind of get into just a tiny bit of politics here at the end. One thing that police have been extremely brutal with and ineffective in is the war on drugs. We've seen where families have been destroyed, and families have nothing to do with it because it was the wrong house being destroyed. Little babies getting flashbanged in their cribs, and they laugh about it. And we see how ineffective it is, and we see how effective legalization is. Even at the limited capacity where they limit where you can put a store and all that, it's still effective. It decriminalizes people, which I'm still not for legalization. I'm more for decriminalization because it should just be like if you decided you wanted to grow oregano. You know, it's up to people what to put in their body. You know, I know people that I would consider eat extremely bad because they eat nothing but processed and foods and fast food. But I like to eat healthier. I like growing my own, you know, herbs, oregano, and thyme and everything I can. I try to, keep it more natural. Or if people choose to smoke marijuana instead of going to a doctor and getting a prescription with a million side effects, if your only side effect is getting the munchies and part of your health problem is you can't eat, maybe that's a better option for you. But in the end of it all, it does come down to personal responsibility, what you put in your body, just like people that drink. You get drunk and do something stupid. Doesn't matter if you're drunk or not. If you're doing something stupid, you have to pay the consequences. Now, talking about the drug war and how ineffective it is, how much pain it's caused a lot of Americans, how it is definitely racially targeted in a lot of areas. Glenn Beck had Ben Carson on today. One of the questions that Glenn Beck asked, he kind of did a little flash session with him, just threw some questions out at him. One of them, do you continue the war on drugs? Ben Carson, his answer, absolutely. I intensify it. Absolutely, I intensify it. And to intensify the war on drugs, you have to continue to give immunity to the law enforcement that accidentally flashbang a child in their crib or shoot a innocent family or their pets. Abridge personal property rights. They don't even have a warrant for that property, but it was an accident and they were conducting business. So what? If someone calls a locksmith out to their house to conduct business and they break into the next door neighbor's house and they're responsible. You hold people responsible, and this does not do that. Intensifying the war on drugs, you are going to have to intensify immunity for people to conduct the intensified raids and battling of it. And of course, he wanted to equate it to the border, which we know it really has nothing to do with the border. And you do it on the border, you know that it doesn't help. They're still growing it. Legalization of marijuana, you said no to. So we know that there's going to be some big battles going on there. So again, he doesn't agree with the Constitution when it comes to war on drugs because I believe in the Constitution, except for when states nullify federal laws that, someone putting something in their body of their choosing is wrong. And states go, no, you know what? They have that right. We're going to give that right to them. We're going to let them exercise that right. Nope. He doesn't agree with the Constitution at that point. He doesn't agree with the 10th Amendment on that. So, I look at anybody that could really support this guy to just be nothing more than a status. And you want to, really get deep into that. I don't know why people call him a Tea Partyist outsider. He's a status quo person that's been buddy with plenty of politicians. If I can find this clip real quick before the end of the broadcast. Okay, I should have it right here. It's a 52-second clip, so this should be it. Okay, and Ben Carson on semi-automatic weapons in large cities.
We're going to do rapid fire.
Okay.
All right. Second Amendment.
Guns, there's a reason for the Second Amendment. People do have the right to have weapons. With this argument that's going on, the way we solve it is we ask, what is each side afraid of? And then we address it that way.
Do I have a right to own a semi-automatic weapon?
It depends on where you live. I think if you live in the midst of a lot of people, and I'm afraid that semi-automatic weapon is going to fall into the hands of a crazy person, I would rather you not have it. If you live out in the country somewhere by yourself, I have no problem.
Is that a government, the federal government, or the local government that can decide that?
I think it'd probably be a local.
But local shouldn't be able to decide on the marijuana issue. See, Ben Carson flip-flops based on his ideology or his personal beliefs, not really his ideology. He says that, he's constitutional, kind of acts like he has libertarian beliefs, but only on the issues of his choosing. That's the problem with a lot of these people that want to call themselves libertarian or even constitutionalists. They don't really mean it. They mean it for things that they personally like. It's such a game, and I can't believe people are still buying into it. And you look at the polls for the Republican race, and I think they succeeded. Like I've said, I really don't think that Donald Trump is this outsider that they portray that the establishment GOP doesn't like, even though Alternative is even picking that up. I think you're picking that up for a reason, because that's what they want you to believe. Oh, he's shaking up the race because no, he's parroting the controlled Tea Party ideology. Both sides, Democrats and Republicans, love to play with the radicals. It's been shown over and over that they love to play with the radicals because they know that, the status quo Republicans are definitely going to vote. Or the status quo Democrats go along with whoever is nominee type voters. They hit the Republican button or the Democrat button on the voting machine. They don't pick and choose through each individual. They know they got those people. What they have to do is get enough of the more independent-minded. Well, they can do that if they appease the radicals. Now you would think, well, that means the libertarians. Well, no. The libertarians are only considered one radical to the establishment. They're going after all the other radicals because they want to make sure that someone that could potentially be a true constitutionalist won't get in office. And one person in particular, Rand Paul, and I don't think that he truly is that libertarian type person, but I think they believe he is. They know who is